September marks the annual Heritage Month in South Africa. The month recognizes aspects of the country's culture which are both tangible and intangible. These include creative expressions such as music and performances, our historical inheritance, language, the food we eat, as well as the popular memory. Today we're looking at the African calendar with cultural expert Mkhulu Nsingiza, who will be joining us later for this conversation, and Joshua Maponga, a Pan-Africanist motivational speaker as well as spiritual leader. Good evening to you, Joshua, and thank you so much for your time this evening. Asiqale ngeyithakazelo zakho. Ubani uJoshua?
Joshua mwana wa Razaro mwana wa Mnyuki Marara mwana wa Nduma, mwana wa Chapinduka, mwana wa Sbou, mwana wa Mwene Mtapu. Sisi wana shoko vudzijana wira miti ya sose wana chigara mawe matanda novora chibwe chitedza chinotedzera vari kuri vari pedo vanotamba nacho mutambo uri paroware. Tisi wana matanga kugara vanichigara mawe matanda anovora wira miti ya sose wana chiramba kusesera mupanango kuba vakarima vanochema newe shoko yangu hii wira miti ya sose vacherwe mhangura navapfuri vayo. The totems will go on and on and on. Yes, but I am Piri from Malawi, the monkey. I am Kabo in Botswana, the monkey. I am Mutseneng in Lesotho, Jamba Selisa Mfene Hlati, and I'm Tolos Kosana in Kwandebele. If you are a baboon and a monkey, you are my person and you are my tribe.
Halala, siyabonga for that. We do appreciate it. Let's talk about this calendar. You know, when one has a conversation, I mean, I was having a conversation earlier with some of my colleagues, and, you know, they look at you as if, Ngati, you are going crazy. What are you talking about? An African calendar, what is that? Let's talk about the significance and the importance of this calendar, and what exactly is the African calendar?
The stick I'm holding in my hand, I call this a thinking tool. It has 4 divisions on it and 3 spaces on it. The 3 spaces speak of time, where we are coming from, where we are, and where we are going. At the extreme end, this is the Western mindset, this is the Northern mindset, the Eastern mindset, and the Southern mindset, which is the African mindset. So before we go very far in terms of time, how did our forefathers celebrate their time? How are we celebrating our time? How will the future celebrate its time? What is the concept of time according to the Americans? What is the concept of time according to the Europeans? What's the concept of time according to the Chinese and the Asians? And what is the concept of time according to the Africans? Any civilization that has lasted, it has been able to own its time and celebrate its own time. Because in celebrating time, we're able actually to transmit traditions and culture from one generation to another generation. So the concept of time to a white man is to do with the Halloween nights. It has to do with the Easter eggs, where rabbits are giving birth to eggs and etc. And you look around the Western culture, it has to do with Mother's Days. It has to do with all the celebrations that they've put actually on the calendar. The Chinese also have their sense of time, which is different. The only question we have that during colonialism, did the African lose sense directly of all his time? Or rather, what now he calls his time is actually celebrating Western festivals, Northern festivals, Chinese celebrations. And ultimately, the concept of Ubuntu in terms of owning our time has been distorted greatly. So for me, time is actually a transmission of information. And Africans celebrate their times in terms of seasons, not in terms of the calendar. We plant, we harvest, and etc. And all these events in a year are marked with African celebrations.
How then did we determine the seasons and months using this particular calendar?
The periods of our women, who are the gods in the African culture, and their menstrual cycles are not managed by the calendar, but they are managed by the moon, telling us therefore that within the African culture, women are spiritual, and as such, we use the solar calendar, which is the relationship between the sun and the moon. When the sun comes south, when the sun is in the middle, when the sun is in the north, when it is in the north, it is time for our winter. When the sun comes back So you begin to have all these concepts of equinoxes and the days of the seasons where the sun is now moving its direction. So Vakaranga, for example, Ka, it is for knowledge and information. Ra, it is for light. Nga, it is for healing. So Kalanga, Vakalanga, the Langa people actually means that these are tribes which observe the movement of the sun. And as the sun is moving across the atmosphere, the African is aware. When it is here, it means this. And by the way, in South Africa, you are blessed. Of all places on the face of the earth, you have the oldest clock of mankind in Mpumalanga, where actually our forefathers put stones. And these stones create a clock. And that clock would actually tell them and what season is it and what time is it. And I'm so sorry to tell you that that property is actually for sale as I'm talking to you right now. It is moving over into private hands to some white people who don't even know the history of South Africa. And they're now going to be owning this as their private property. But yes, time has been measured by the movement of the sun, movements of the moons. Through these movements, we know when to fish, we know when to hunt, we know when to plow, we know when to harvest. And hence, the celebration of birthdays and etc. is foreign to Africans. How do you spend 9 months in your mother's womb and then you celebrate your birthday every 12 months? I leave that for your consumption.
Now, Joshua, you know, for me, very briefly, before we go for a quick breather and then come back to this conversation, when you talk about this property then being now on sale, that is a huge part of our history that is now going to go missing, essentially.
You can send that conversation to the Minister of Arts and Culture and ask him what is he doing when such things are happening. You can send that conversation to the President of the country and ask him what is he doing. But of course, we know that the democratic system does not respect African culture. So most likely it means nothing to the political system.
That's a very disturbing, you know, revelation that you make there. But I'm going to ask us to pause for a second. Our other guest, Mkhulu Nsingiza, is going to be joining this conversation in just a moment. Thanks for staying with us. Let's continue then with this conversation looking at the African calendar. We're now joined by cultural expert Mkhulu, in fact, Nsingiza, and Joshua Maponga is still on Zoom for us, and we continue then with this conversation. As we were saying that you look like Morgan Freeman. I'm sure even our viewers are going to be wondering what's happening now. But thank you so much for coming through. You know, when one listens to what Joshua's had to say about the significance of the African calendar and the concept of time according to Africans and the concept of time according to the Chinese and the Western and all of that, one then looks at the process of civilization and the concept of it. It does look like Africans were civilized as well, so we didn't need any assistance.
We don't say they were civilized as well. They were the initiators of civilization because, you know, they were the first. I'm a firstborns. Africans are the firstborns. I mean, even science agrees that, you know, there's this theory, out of Africa theory, that everybody in the world started here, then spread all over the world. And when you talk about that civilization started on the southern part of the continent. How do we know? We have this oldest stone calendar in Mpumalanga called Inzalo Yelang. And then there was the moon, a calendar that used to track the moon. It's called the Libombo bones. There's a similar bone in DRC called the Congo bone, a Shango bone. But now, Le Yala Libombo, it's older than the, you know, the Shango bone, which then confirms Uguti civilization started here in the south, but it was refined on the northern part of the continent.
And when we were hearing from Joshua earlier on, he tells us that you know, that heritage site in Mpumalanga is now on sale.
Oh, yes. Yes, this is what Besilapa were there we left on Tuesday. Salindela throughout the whole night. But that's the story we actually got to Guti. There are people who are trying to privatize that place. And, well, see, articulately nathi position yethu ukuthi that is the most sacred place for African people. This is what Ubab Credo Mutwa said. Uguti is the most sacred place on the continent. So it means, Uguti, that is tied to our spirituality. It can never be, commercialized. That is why all efforts must be towards saving that place so that it retains its purity. This is the Mecca that Africans, are looking for. Arabs go to, Saudi Arabia. Other people go in their own places. Our Mecca used to be Egypt. But now Egypt is still under occupation. So Umoya is bringing back us to the source where everything started. I don't know if you know, the complex of Giza started here in the south. There are 3 pyramids, that are similar in construction to those in Giza, here in Mpumalanga next to this stone calendar. So it means civilization started here. Kokobetu, when you calculate, how old are those pyramids here in South Africa, in Mpumalanga? They are older than the pyramids of Giza. Even the calendar, the stone calendar in Mpumalanga is older than, the stone calendar in Egypt. So it means it confirms with everything started here. So there is that, spiritual heritage for African people, all African. The view or the long-term plan is to make that place, a pilgrimage for African people, because we don't have a center where we all meet as a collective.
Is there a willingness, though, to preserve it?
Oh, no, there is a willingness. I spoke to a director, from the department, I think, the department that is responsible for forestry. I spoke to that guy. He is also adamant that that place should never be privatized. We know the players, are trying to push, for that. And for us, it's an insult. Because how can you commercialize our spiritual center? It's this insensitivity, that we find amongst the people. Another thing, when you go to our sacred places, you have to get a permit for you to enter. I mean, this is our country. It's a shame that you have to be treated like that in your own country. You want to go and connect with the spirit of the continent, then there are all these laws that were just, created for you, just to buy you, so that you are not able to fully express your spirituality.
Now, Joshua, if I can bring you back into this conversation, where do you think, the disconnect happened or things went wrong for this calendar to now be finding itself in a position where we are talking about it tonight, but some people don't even know it exists?
I want to appreciate the presence of Babu Nsingiza. He is a wealth of information. I've worked with him for a couple of years now. He's a student of Babu Credo Mutwa. He sits on his hand in his office right now, huge amounts of information that South Africa and Africa needs to know. And my main concern is the lack of political will and the abuse of the democratic system on the cultural knowledge systems. It looks like democracy is very arrogant and very stubborn in terms of recognizing where and how the people of the continent must survive. As such, you would find that under the democratic system, you have a democracy that still re-entrenches foreign holidays on the people. The Valentine's Day is stamped onto the thing, Mother's Day is stamped on the thing, Christmas Day is stamped on the thing, Easter Day is stamped, even to take these holidays as national holidays, when they have nothing to do with the Africans themselves. Where did we lose it? We lost it by accepting a colonial system to manage our time. And as I said earlier on, any civilization that does not own its time in terms of its celebrations and managing its own cultural activities, it remains a slave. That's why in Ethiopia right now it's 2014, I think it's 2004 or 2014. They're running on their own calendar, the Ethiopian calendar. Chinese have their own holiday, which is awkward to us. But because we have been colonized by the West, we have lost our sense of time. And take note, what do you do with a child who does not have the sense of time? Because in the ancient times, when a baby is born, they were supposed to stay indoors until the new moon comes. Those are the kingdoms of the south. Then they'll take the child out and show them the moon. And then the child will begin to have a sense of time. Maybe that's why many of you women don't have timing.
Wow. Yeah, that's a mouthful and a lot to take in. But one of the things that you spoke about that I really want to touch on with Mkhulu here in studio is the holidays. We're looking at June, which should have been Christmas Day, according to the African calendar. But now we celebrate it in December. The 23rd of September should have been our New Year. And yet, it looks like we're off balance.
No, we're off balance. Why? Because when we took over the pseudo power, we took everything that came with the colonizer. You know, even their calendar, because they are in the northern hemisphere. That calendar is written based on the northern hemisphere. We are on the southern hemisphere. It means when it's winter here, it's summer that side. When it's spring here, it is autumn that side. So I don't understand, how do you build a nation if you can't determine, the time yourself based on nature and nothing else? Because most of, these holidays are political holidays. It has nothing to do with nature. Now, the African New Year, it's on the 21st of September, the sun officially leaves the northern hemisphere, passes through the line that they call the imaginary line of the equator. It takes 3 days. On the 22nd, it reaches that equilibrium. Then on the 23rd, it makes 1 degree southwards, which then indicates a new cycle for the southern hemisphere. So, it's wrong. Then we blame the creator that is not listening to us. Why do you ask izinto ze winter ngesama, izinto ze summer ngewinter? The creator is confused, because of our consciousness. The colonization is still so rife in our heads. We can't even recognize time. Even, a simple thing like, how do you wake up already you've lost 6 hours? Because the sun is just rising. U7 is supposed to be the first hour of the day. When you calculate like that, you reach the 6 p.m., you get 12 hours. I mean, its nature is there.
Mkhulu, we're out of time, but I'm going to give you the final word here. How do we begin then to merge it all together and fix it?
No, the only way to fix it is to live it. We've started living it at a great empire of Kemet. So the more people are conscious of this, it will make us one day, all of us Africans, assemble at a particular point, and that will be an instrument to unite, African people.
I can't wait to have this deeper conversation with both of you, because it looks like there's a lot that we need to talk about when it comes to this. Joshua, your final thoughts in 20 seconds.
I want the calendar that Mkhulu has written to be taken by the Department of Education and be included into the educational curriculum so that our children, the next generation, will have a sense of time. I thank you.
I wish we had more time. Thank you so much to you both for your time. I really do appreciate it. And I've learned a lot tonight, and I certainly do hope that the viewers as well, you have learned as much as you needed to from this particular conversation. It is one that is sparking a debate, and it needs for us to delve deeper into it. That was cultural expert Mkhulu Nsingiza and Pan-Africanist Joshua Maponga. Thank you so much to you both for your time.